Hello there, this is Magenta Pixie speaking. I have had a question come in from one of the members of my Dear Pixie membership over on Buy Me a Coffee, and I usually respond to all the members' questions with an audio post in the membership section. However, I have just received some emails from people who are not members asking pretty much the same question. So I thought, okay, I think I need to respond to this over on YouTube. It's part of the story, it's part of the novel. And as people who are not members have asked the same question, I'm going to share this with a larger audience rather than just putting it on my membership. So this is regarding Rigello Gnome, Rigello Gnome, and the party that he has, the big birthday party, which is a party that likes to create reform in the elemental village. So it's really about that. So if you're not, if you haven't been reading the novel beyond the YouKay domain, then you probably won't be familiar with this story. For those who are reading the novel in the YouKay domain, you will be familiar with this story, I assume, if you've been keeping abreast of the situation. So the question is, what is going on with Rigello Gnome and other gnomes that are attending his party? What's going on with the reform situation in the elemental village? What's actually happening? Okay, so there's been all sorts of scandal, and there's been one librarian member of the YouKay Council that has been removed, and there have been scandals and allegations and all sorts. Okay, let's just briefly look at what has been happening. So what I would say first and foremost to the people asking this question is, it's really challenging to hold a fourth dimensional structure within longevity. You can create fourth dimensional structures, but often that fourth dimensional structure over time will implode upon itself naturally, with or without infiltration. Obviously, with infiltration, it will implode far quicker, but without infiltration, it can implode upon itself because it's fourth dimensional and it doesn't hold that cohesion. So the only way for a fourth dimensional structure to actually hold within longevity would to have some kind of fifth dimensional input, and ideally a fifth dimensional core, or at the very least a cohesive higher fourth dimensional echelon core. So what I'm saying here is there needs to be all the energetics of the fifth dimension and the higher echelons of the fourth dimension, which is harmony, love, cohesion, communication, understanding, empathy, all of those things. Now, I'm not saying that one needs to create a party within the village and expect that birthday party or Christmas party to be all of those things, especially in a hijacked village, and when the current librarian high councils in all the domains are already held by Overlord structures, apart from obviously the Americano domain, which we now know is not held by an Overlord structure. So it's difficult to hold a fourth dimensional structure within longevity without it imploding, and the Rigello Gnome structure is a fourth dimensional structure. Now, I would say that it's difficult to pinpoint here, but I would say Rigello Gnome has the ability to access the higher echelons of the fourth dimension. It doesn't necessarily mean he's remaining there, but he's able to move through that field. And that is due to an ability to hold a grounded structure and to hold a paradigm. Now, it's not formed in the way a 5D paradigm would be formed. There is no paradigm really until some movement into 5D, but there is still a form of cohesion through grounded focus. But that doesn't mean that that is fully focused and fully structured. There can still be issues, and with Rigello, there are some emotional sensitivities. However, that can be mitigated by the team around Rigello and the support for Rigello and the birthday party or Christmas party that Rigello is creating. So we've established that the party, the birthday party itself in this elemental village, in this fictional novel, is actually a fourth dimensional structure, meaning that the chances of it holding longevity are extremely low without some form of change and some form of fifth dimensional input, and that leads to an implosion of that structure. Now, if there's a cohesive aspect, and I wouldn't say Rigello Gnome is fully cohesive, however, there is enough cohesion there to hold form with the intentions for what Rigello holds for his birthday party. So the intentions can remain cohesive. Therefore, even if the structure itself implodes, Rigello can hold enough cohesion to continue on with those intentions, which is why Rigello has moved through a couple of other birthday parties in the past. Those birthday parties have imploded for whatever reason, even though they have achieved aims and they've achieved objectives, but Rigello has remained within the trajectory of his mission. And so have some of the other members. However, some of the other guests at the birthday party, other members of this group, are not holding cohesion. So what we actually have here within the overall birthday party is a distortion within more than one individual, and that prevents cohesion within the overall structure. It can't be fully 5D until there is a critical mass of 5D within the structure. And even if there's a critical mass within 5D, any 4D distorted individuals, fairies, gnomes, pixies, whatever, wouldn't sustain. So this is what you're seeing playing out here in this party, in this birthday party that likes to create reform in the YouKay village. This is what you are seeing. So what you have here is a distortion within more than one individual, and that prevents cohesion within the entire structure. And a distortion within an individual, it can be mitigated, it can be dealt with, but more often than not, it can be disruptive. So in this situation, and this is the question I've been asked by those who have contacted me, is this Overlord infiltration? Well, not Overlord infiltration per se, as in the whole structure is already Overlord infiltrated. There's already a hijack. But when you look at the party itself, when you actually look at the birthday party itself, there's no Overlord infiltration per se on this particular issue. This is a natural implosion because it's a 4D structure that's unable to hold longevity, and you have individuals involved, and specifically one individual that doesn't hold cohesion and that holds distortion, creating a disruption. So it's not Overlord infiltration per se. It's a natural fourth dimensional implosion. However, from the Overlord perspective, they are aware of this. They are aware of, they wouldn't necessarily use these words, but fourth dimensional structures are unable to hold longevity, and that there is a high chance, a very high chance of implosion. They're aware of that. They wouldn't necessarily use those words to explain that, but what they do is capitalize on what they see as weaknesses. So these aren't necessarily weaknesses. You could call it that if you want. What I call this is terminology that the 9 share with me, and that is the inability to hold longevity within cohesion, and the fact that it's a fourth dimensional structure that will very, very likely implode. But the Overlord factions would see that as weaknesses, so they capitalize upon that. So this is what they do. Sometimes the Overlords will sit and wait for a structure to begin what looks like it could be a rift or a potential implosion, and then they will step in to stoke, if you will, a small fire. What is a very small fire? They will stoke it and fan the flames and create a bigger fire. That's where the Overlord infiltration has come in. So it didn't create this. This was a natural implosion because the structure is not 5D. It cannot hold longevity. It's moved into an implosion. There are individuals involved that do not hold cohesion and they are disruptive. But the Overlords have stepped in and created what would have been a small blip that could have been moved through. They have fanned those flames and created a large bonfire out of a tiny little spark of a flame. And they've done this through the town criers. They've utilized the town criers to blow up these flames. So what this really is, to be honest, a blip. It's a mini implosion. It looks like a large implosion because of the way that it's being spoken about with the town criers in the village, but it's a small blip in the grand scheme of things when you actually look at the fullness of time. So what I feel needs to occur here, and what I feel is likely, very highly likely to occur, but it isn't definite, is that the individuals involved within their own paradigms, their own belief systems, will realize that there has to be some shifting and that there has to be a movement into some form of cohesion, some kind of focus to then get back on a trajectory to grow in strength. Now that will come from those that lend their energy to the system. So if you want to look at an example, look at the Americano domain. Now the Stormfire team in and of itself is fourth dimensional. The reason why it's held longevity, and it has held longevity, even the 4 years where Stormfire wasn't eating bananas, Stormfire was still a top banana, so there has been longevity. Now the reason being is that structure has always held fifth dimensional energetics. Now it might not have been fifth dimensional in and of itself, but there are fifth dimensional energetics within that structure, predominantly coming from what is known in the village as the Maga network. So you have this group of fairies, gnomes, pixies, elves, sprites that hold the Maga frequency, and many of those, quite a good number of those, are fifth dimensionally individuals. They're fifth dimensional thinking. They hold fifth dimensional consciousness, so they're able to direct their energies and focus into not necessarily the Stormfire structure in and of itself, but into the intentions that they hold for where they want to go as a domain, and that gets placed into the structure when they lend their energy to the Stormfire team or the Stormfire structure. On top of that, you have a higher guidance system coming in from the structure itself and from Stormfire. And now, in this new Dream Team grouping, there is an actual individual in the Dream Team who holds fifth dimensional consciousness in and of themselves. So one of the Dream Team members has access to 5D anyway. So that's anchoring this. Now this is easier in a way for the Stormfire team to hold, because the Americano domain is a huge domain and the YouKay domain is a tiny domain in comparison. So it's much, much smaller. But what Rigello Gnome and his team need to do, and they don't have to understand this in terms of cohesion and implosion and 4D and 5D. They need to find, if you're looking at this in real physical world terms, like, 3D thinking terms, they need to look for focus, They need to look for pattern, cohesion. They need to become very aligned with the intentions and the goals and understand what they are and be driven and ambitious and kind of take a leaf out of the Stormfire structures book, if you will. And I'm not saying Rigello needs to be the same as Stormfire. They're very different gnomes, and there are obviously issues. None of these structures are presenting as perfect in any way. But this is what Rigello will be called to do. So although this looks like a huge issue, that's been very much inflated by the town criers. When you actually take away the town crier fanning the flames and you look at the issue itself over the potential life of this mission and the intentions, then there is potential longevity there. This is just a blip to that, but some shifts need to occur, some changes need to be made, and that is within the birthday party itself and within the individuals involved, so that they can come into alignment with the intentions and goals for where they are going, as well as allowing flow to take place at the same time. Because it's a hijack reality, the overlords are going to be continuously let's say, capitalizing upon any little blip that occurs. And this is a newly formed birthday party with different types of characters. So there are likely to be little blips along the way. And so we do have Overlord capitalization rather than infiltration. Now, if things were to go from now very, very smoothly into that trajectory, which I don't really see, I see more blips like this, but if it were to go smoothly, the Overlords would come in with infiltration anyway. Of course they would, because Rigello and his team is a huge threat to the Overlords in that domain, just like Stormfire is a huge threat in the Americano domain, and they've lost the top banana in the Americano, so they're coming in from different angles now. They are utilising what surrounds the Stormfire structure rather than going for the core of the structure itself. At the moment in the YouKay domain, they are sitting back and waiting for these blips, these mini implosions, to then capitalise upon them. So what I actually see here is the path into this trajectory and the potential for this longevity for the birthday party that likes to create reform in the village is held. It is there as a template. As long as Rigello, Rigello Gnome and his team can come into some form of cohesion, ideally at the higher echelons of 4D, which is structure and focus. I'm not seeing any 5D there other than the individuals that lend their energy to this story. So you have got fifth dimensional fairies, gnomes and pixies holding 5D consciousness, lending their energy to this. Not necessarily that they're sending energy to the Rigello structure themselves, but that their intentions align with the goals, the policies and the intentions of the birthday party itself, which is all to do with the same thing, and that is the great awakening in the village, the awakening of all the fae, and the cleaning up of the streets, and the changing of the dirty swamp water into clean crystal water, on all those things. So if Rigello Gnome and his team can align with that in whatever form that takes in 3D, then they can create some form of longevity and sustain and go on to receive the top banana. Because of the Overlord capitalization, it has taken the potential for reaching the top banana down somewhat. That's because there have been changes in consciousness within those who lend their energies to this birthday party. Now that can be picked up, but obviously the Overlords are going to continue to capitalize upon this. So can they actually get back on track? I would say yes, they can. The probability is let's say, it's difficult because the probability is moving all the time, but let's say the probability is, say, 70 to 75% that they can get back on track with this, which is fairly high. It's not up in the 90s. So we just need to keep an eye on this situation. If this is where we place our energies, it's not about sending the energy to the Rigello structure. It's about looking at which structure in the physical reality can hold the intentions and the goals and the knowings that we hold, which is the movement into the singularity, and anything that comes into, if you will, a planetary and galactic ascension. So that's where we are as spiritual individuals. Now that is coming into alignment regardless, because that's a fifth dimensional structure. So it might not have manifested into a cohesion within the physical dimension in its fullness, but it's there as a template. Meaning, as I've said many times before, in the village, in the novel, the great awakening of all the Fae is inevitable. Now, whether that is done through Rigello Gnome and his team in the YouKay domain, or some other new team, I think Rigello still holds a lot of energy that's active, if you will, in alignment with those goals and that trajectory and the mission that he came in to fulfill when he was born. He still holds a lot of that, if you will, energetic mass around him. So even though there's been this mini implosion, it hasn't imploded him. There has been a pushing of his emotional field and a bit of a prodding of his emotional field, and that's been happening over with Stormfire as well. But there's enough cohesion there to remain in alignment with the trajectory. So I would say it will still be, the likelihood is it will still be Rigello, and he is still holding the highest potential for the YouKay domain in the Politicano magazine field at this point. But our focus is the trajectory itself into the singularity. Our focus is the ascension. Our focus is our own personal Stargate ascension process and our own personal growth and expansion and enlightenment. And all of these little smaller sections in the Politicano field are the representations of that playing out in a physical form. So we don't want to get too caught up in Politicano magazine playouts, even though they are indeed essential in the third dimension. There is more importance upon the Americano domain, because that's the central core of the Politicano domain field as a shift and a change in alignment with this ascension process that this planet and that this galactic field is going through. So what occurs in the Americano domain is going to occur everywhere else in these little mirrored forms. So it may or may not be for Rigello Ferragio. It's very likely that it will be. He's the one holding that mass at the moment. But should that shift and change, it's going to happen regardless. It's going to occur regardless, because if it's occurring in the Americano domain, this will filter out into the rest of the village, and all domains are moving through this. The Americano, if you will, is the first domino, and all of the others will follow in whatever form that takes. So I hope that's given some insight into what is occurring in the YouKay domain in the novel with Rigello Ferragio Gnome and his team, the birthday party that likes to create reform in the village. So I hope that's helped. Thank you so much for listening. I'll speak to you all again soon. Bye. I am delighted to announce that the first 3 books of my Matrix Mastery teachings are now available collected into a single omnibus edition. This information within these 3 books, making up the Matrix Mastery Omnibus, holds key codes, maps, and coordinates for anyone moving into awareness, activation, and the knowing that there is far more to the human reality on Earth than just the physical plane. As the starseeds on Earth go through the process of DNA reconstruction and regrouping of cosmic multidimensional memory, the significant codex within each transmission is downloaded to the reader directly from their own monadic avatar self. Multiple flame letter memory codes are utilized, including the rose, the chalice, the golden stargate, Atlantis, crystalline light, Excalibur, the sword of truth, the dragon, the emerald flame, and all that encompasses the holographic nature of reality. These codes are held within the most sacred twin pillars of light, your heart and your mind. The Matrix Mastery Omnibus, available now.